Today's topic, kanji, Chinese characters. Nick, let's hear it. What do you think? Everything and anything.
What do I...
Come on, let it out.
Well, kanji's, it's an interesting thing in as much as I think everybody who's been studying kanji for any length of time really has a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, in that sometimes they think, but it's beautiful, and I have kind of a reaction to it sometimes, it's like, it makes the meaning of this kanji somehow mean, the meaning of this word somehow mean a little bit more when you also know the meanings of the kanji. You can see sort of how it's put together, and how these two ideas complement each other, or whatever it might be. I mean, and then there's another side to it where sometimes you see the kanji and you've seen the kanji enough, maybe in other words, that you actually get a sense of what the meaning of the word is, without actually knowing how to read it. And that in itself is also a good thing. I think that's good too. But then on more of the negative side, it is stupidly hard. It's so many of the kanji are extremely similar to one another, and I've studied kanji for hours upon hours, and just an almost insurmountable amount of time I've spent studying kanji, and I'm still not there. I'm still not at sort of an adult level of an adult Japanese native speaker level of kanji comprehension and understanding, and especially, how would I say it? Like being able to also read the kanji is like a sort of another sort of demon. How about you? What's your situation with kanji at the moment?
Frustration. Well, I went through many different ways of trying to study kanji. I started the traditional way, like when I was in Canada, taking first year Japanese in university. You learn some basic characters. You start out with the numbers, I think, and you learn 1, 2, 3. Those are pretty simple, and basically the first 10 are pretty simple, but then we started learning like how to write the days of the week, and so like yo, like nichiyobi, or like getsuyobi. That jump from the first 10 or so to that next one, it really surprised me. Like, it was just such a different level, and I think that was the beginning of my an uphill battle. But since then, honestly, I think I've gotten a lot better. My kanji recognition is pretty good. I can read the majority of like junior high school textbooks and pretty much understand everything on the page. I can't really read the newspapers fluently, but I'll read stuff on the internet a lot. Like, I'll read, blog posts, tweets, stuff on Twitter, Facebook posts, and I'll read like news articles, like online articles, like something that could be on like the front page of Yahoo or whatever. I'll read stuff like that, and I'll be able to understand it. But there are just some forms of writing that are aimed at adults, for example. Like, I think I really feel excluded from the newspapers or some other kinds of writing. I don't really feel that way in English, and even when I was a stupid high school student, completely ignorant to most of the world, I could still read, new materials. Whether I understood it or not, I could read it, and it would be possible for me to kind of be able to grasp it somehow if I wanted to invest a little more time into the actual material. But with kanji, I just don't really have that ability, regardless of the amount of time I've spent on the language. In terms of study, I've definitely spent probably 3 or 4 times more learning Japanese than learning English. English, it's just, for me, it's all through exposure, right? And I guess for native speakers, it's mostly that way. We all have core English classes in school growing up, but I think even without those core English classes, we would still have some pretty functional ability of the language. But I don't think you can have that with Japanese. Japanese kids, they need Japanese classes, a few times a week. Not a few times a week, maybe even a few times a day, sorry. They need a lot of work and they need a lot of conscious effort to be able to read the newspaper. With English, I think most kids, they're able to read the paper, in the first or second grade of elementary school. But Japanese kids, it's just not possible. I think they're in their mid-teens by the time they can read a real newspaper. It's just such a hurdle. It's such a challenge. And I don't want to talk too negatively about it, but I've had a rough experience. I haven't given up, but sometimes I really think, is it really worth this investment to be able to write? Because with computers and technology nowadays, like, you can, as long as you know how to pronounce the word, as long as you know the phonetics, and if you can recognize the character, you can easily select it from like a list from your input method editor on a computer or on your cell phone. So I really think it should be revised. Like, I think Korea has gone the ideal route. So for example, they were using kanji before. They decided to keep kanji as an art form and to use it occasionally in some very, very special circumstances, maybe like a name. Occasionally they might use it, but they're using Hangul, like the Korean alphabet, which is, it's simple. I think it's probably even simpler than the Japanese hiragana and katakana. And I think because Koreans have that, they're learning more things. They're not necessarily learning words, but they're learning more things. They're learning more content. They have access to more content because their form of literature, their form of writing is a lot simpler. I think Japanese people, they're just, first, you got to invest into the language. You got to be able to access these tools to be able to access content. It's just such a hurdle, where I think a lot of other languages like English, for example, or Korean, they just have easier access to content through their writing system. And I really wish Japan would go that route. Okay, that's enough for me. Thanks for listening, everyone.
There's a lot of points in there. I just had a thought just towards the end that I know almost every week I hear from students this same sentiment, which is, if I write, for instance, I do phonics, and I'll do like the big letter as in English phonics, and then I'll do a big letter and a small letter, and I'll teach how to write a capital letter and a lowercase letter, uppercase and lowercase, and when I'm doing that, sometimes students like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard to know that. For example, something like P. P is the difference between an uppercase and a lowercase is, I guess, is
those two strokes, right? Two strokes. Come on now.
Well, yeah. Or a D or something like that, which is sort of it looks quite different to its lowercase version. It's like, oh my goodness, it's just there's all these differences now to consider, and then like people's names are in capitals. I mean, it's almost too much, you know.
Yeah.
And then and then I was thinking as you were talking towards the end there about the idea of sort of students having to invest the original time, the time originally, I should say, into learning just how to read and write, and that is taking up so much time. Maybe that is actually negatively, as teachers, us as teachers, that might actually be negatively affecting students' ability to approach English because they see
Oh,
another
for
writing
sure.
script
For
and
sure.
and they have this memory. They have this memory like that. Oh man, I am still in the thick of learning kanji. Or if they're a bit older, like the students you teach, it's like I have just finished climbing this mountain. I mean, and now they're telling me to learn another
Hmm.
one, and I don't think they might be seeing it in that way. They don't quite see it as being an extreme simplification over
Hmm.
kanji.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the worst ways to start. I think how they approach English in the earlier grades, just like a lot of vocab, a lot of games, stuff like that. That's the best way to go. I don't even think we really need to get into writing until much later uh, in their English experience. Like, maybe after like a few years, like let's say when they're in the fourth, fifth, or sixth grade, like don't even like touch or look at the alphabet until then. Just have
Yeah,
fun,
yeah.
and they'll understand the phonics naturally, like natives, I think, that way.
Yeah. So you had a third point I wanted to mention, which was the idea that language, or rather written language, being something that is made, it should be made to express ideas, and that a big, maybe unfortunate thing, and I can't be too much of a judge on this because, I mean, Japanese people, I mean, they seem to be quite intelligent and they don't, whatever, but it seems to be that if you want to start spreading ideas, then you would make the language easy to comprehend so that someone could learn it quickly, and then you could get them onto more things. You could get them onto more advanced things. You could get them onto different kinds of texts, and you could get them onto focusing on, poetry, and focusing on short stories or novels, or focusing on like older text compared to more modern text or whatever it is. But if you are comparatively in the Japanese model, spending so much time drilling and re-drilling and testing kanji, I mean, you only have so many hours with kids, and you only have so many hours in a life, more generally speaking, to be devoted to doing that, to getting you up to a standard where then you can then move on to more content and more content. Obviously, while they're learning kanji, they are, of course, reading novels and
Hmm.
doing other things like that. But I'm just arguing that it could potentially be more. They could be doing more reading of poetry, more reading of other things other than studying kanji over and over and over if there was no kanji to
Right.
study. I was thinking, like you were saying with Korea, if you took that language, which, as you've said before, you could probably learn in a weekend.
The alphabet, yes.
Um,
The Hangul, the Korean writing system.
yes,
Not the
Hangul. Yeah.
language
If
itself,
you
just
if
the written part of it.
Oh yes, sorry. Yep. If you did that, it just seems as though, I mean, if it's a problem that you can get rid of by the end of the equivalent of grade 1 or grade 2, or hell, even grade 3, you're like sort of
Hmm.
9 years ahead of Japanese as far as getting the writing system down
Yeah.
pat.
Think about it like, think
I
of a
mean, that's just,
situation,
yeah.
you're a foreigner in Korea. Let's say you already know how to read the language. If there's something on a menu, just if you know how to read the language plus one other word, or maybe a few other words. Like if there's something written on the menu, you could just say like, well, whatever's written on the menu, it could be like kimchi, and then you could ask, what's kimchi? And then, provided that you understand the explanation, or if the person could, like, show you a picture or explain it to you in English very quickly, you've already understood what it is. Like, you read it, but you didn't understand the meaning, but you got the meaning of the word from like a native speaker very easily. But in Japan, let's say it's like sushi or something, and it's written in kanji. You can't even ask what it is. Like, you can't say like, what's sushi? First, you'll have to ask, what does this say? And they could say sushi, and then you'll have to ask, what's sushi? And then they could show you a picture, or they could explain it to you in English or whatever. It's always like an extra question, and all these things, they add up really quickly. It's just a big hurdle. And it's nothing against Japanese people, because it's actually really amazing how creative some Japanese people are, despite all of these challenges. Just imagine how artistic or creative or powerful or expressive the average person could be if they had more time or more access to the language, if they didn't have to invest all this time in kanji or learning the complexities of the Japanese language. How did you start learning kanji?
That's a good question. What happened is I'd been studying Japanese for a while, and then I was going off the idea I think that a lot of people go off, which is I'll just pick it up, so to speak, because I'll pick it up in the same way that I was picking up words, in the same way that I was picking up phrases, in the same way that I was
Little did you know.
Little did I know that, it's just one of those things that when you see it in hindsight, it seems so silly that you would ever think that. It seems so silly that you could pick it up as a foreigner, not even living in Japan, whereas a Japanese person couldn't pick it up, even though they lived and were surrounded by it every day. That they have to go through a rigorous training, but of course I don't. And obviously that's silly. And I went on a search, and then everybody, and people telling me this in person was a big deal too. A lot of people in person were telling me, Hasek, it's all about Hasek. Like, it's a bit crappy that he doesn't teach Onyomi. He does actually in a different book. But a lot of people either don't seem to know about that or don't seem to use it. But he said, not Hasek, but people said to me, hey, he's got a book called, I think it's called, is it not
Remembering the Kanji? RTK.
Remembering the Kanji.
RTK 1, 2, and 3.
That's right. So RTK 1 is, I'd say, definitely the most famous.
Yeah, just to get through. Well, you can't start 2 unless you finish 1. And just to get through 1 is quite the task. You're getting through like an elite demographic. Yeah,
I am a part of that demographic.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So I actually went through all of those, which I think is around about 2,300 kanji, and that took me over a year. It took me about a year and maybe 2 months, and I was hoping to do it originally in like
is that a
months.
Year nonstop? Then, like no sleep, no eating? How did you do this?
It would average out to be, like I said much earlier in this conversation, I've spent a lot of hours learning kanji. It would probably be close to half an hour every day for that whole year. that's a lot of time if you add it all up. That's a lot of hours, and frequently more than half an hour. I'd say as an average it would be half an hour, just because there would be, say, a week where I would give up and cry. And then, no, I don't think I ever cried, but I certainly might have gotten angry and kind of, gotten a bit sick of the whole thing. But in any case, yeah, I did that, and knowing the meaning of all of the kanji, of course I still make mistakes. I mean, trying to keep 2,300 separate pieces of any kind of information in your brain is going to be like holes and gaps and mistakes, especially when so many of the kanji look so similar. In fact, I was just discussing with a teacher at school today how I often get confused between extremely similar looking kanji, and I was giving her some examples of those really similar kanji. Anyway, so yeah, I got through that, and then knowing that I had finished that, kanji became less of, obviously through most of this conversation we've been talking about the social implications of kanji, which, are not good. I tend to think that they're not good, similar to you. But as far as my own personal feelings towards kanji and my own personal feelings towards learning kanji, I think I'm a bit more favourable even than you are. I tend to feel like I've essentially conquered a large section of the difficulty of kanji, and as such, I feel kind of like I'm on the home stretch now. It's kanji, so the home stretch, it might still be another year or two. But I feel like it is a home stretch and there is a finish line now, as opposed to, when you first start learning kanji, there doesn't seem to be any finish line at all. And I don't envy anyone who is, back maybe halfway through remembering the kanji, or even if they've only got 100 more to go. It's just horrible.
Yeah, it took me about a year or two, but I wasn't necessarily studying the kanji. What I was doing was I was making my own mnemonics and inputting them into my own Anki deck. So I was going through each one individually, and if I liked Haysig's mnemonic, I used it, but most of the time I didn't. So I would either use my own, or if I couldn't come up with one easily on my own within a few minutes, I would go to a website. I think it's called Kanji Kohi. It's connected to Haysig, but it's just a combination of everybody else's mnemonics. So I would.
You're talking about reviewing.
Yeah, RTK. RTK1.
Yeah, no. No, I think the website. I know its email address is Kanji Kohi, but isn't the actual website called Reviewing the Kanji, not Remembering the Kanji?
It could be. It could be. But yeah, it took me about a year, but I was doing it for I think at least a few hours a day, every day, just about. And I actually had a competition with two of my friends, and the competition was who could finish all of them first. And both of those guys, they quit pretty early. Like one guy quit after like 300, and the other guy quit after like 150. And I went all the way through.
Really? You finished all 2,000?
Making mnemonics, yes. I never really studied them. Like after I made my Anki deck, my RTK1 Anki deck, I reviewed it a little bit, but I haven't really studied it much after my creation. But
crazy.
Oddly enough, just by making the mnemonics, I remembered a lot of the kanji, and a lot of them, they're kind of imprinted really well in my head, even though I never studied them.
Yeah, I was
at least 10 out of the 2,000 are stuck in my head really well. At least 10. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing that's slowly slipping away from me the writing, because I learned how to write all the kanji too, which is always nice. It has, I mean, I know that some people say it's useless to learn how to write, and I actually tend to agree in most ways. It is nice though, for example, when you're struggling to communicate with someone and you feel like you know that word in kanji or something which has a similar meaning, and then you can write the kanji and you can do it, hey, in like correct stroke order, even better. But you can do that. It's really, it saved me more than once. It saved me enough that maybe not that it was worth all the hassle, but it certainly has saved me enough that, you know, I think, hey, it's kind of cool. But I had a point beyond that. Oh, that's right. Yes, I've been slowly losing my memory of them, just because I haven't been studying. As I've discussed with you before, I pretty much study onyomi now, but that doesn't include writing. At least I haven't been including writing in that. So my writing of kanji has probably gone down in quality since a year ago, but it's still pretty good. It's like that sort of, you know, once you learn to ride a bike thing. I think I pretty much still know. When I see a kanji, I can pretty much guess it's for instance, it's writing order and things, just because I have another 2,300 other kanji to go off as like sort of a very detailed blueprint.
Yeah, I think it's really good that Japan is really into penmanship and calligraphy. I'm not talking. Well, they're into calligraphy with the brush, but I'm talking about pen calligraphy right now, because there are a lot of resources. If you go to any bookstore, there are stacks of books, just all kinds of resources how to improve your pen calligraphy. I've lived in a few different cities all around Canada, and I've never seen any books on like how to improve your handwriting, things like that. But I really, well, you know, I'm into typography and calligraphy, so I'm really happy to have these resources. So if you're willing to invest the time and effort, you can have some really nice handwriting.
Yeah. I mean, my handwriting is almost like a computer font, which isn't necessarily a great thing, but it is very accurate. I'd say that my writing style is probably more accurate than most Japanese people, but it is not necessarily better or more natural, I should say, than most Japanese people. I mean, it might look fake, but it's very, very readable. Yeah. But that's a small conceit.
Would it be like? Would your handwriting in Japanese be the equivalent of Comic Sans in English, the font?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you mean because you don't like Comic Sans?
Partially, but I'm suggesting that it's legible, but it may not be appealing to the eye. It might not have that pizzazz, that flair that everyone kind of tries to strive for with pen calligraphy. It's clear, it's legible.
Yep, I'd say that's Yep, I'd say that's good. I mean, that's probably a good way to put it. Also, I'd say that, I mean, you got to take whatever you can get, and I would say that the order of kanji, I'm very good. I've remembered pretty much. I would say out of those 2,300, I could probably write over, say, 1,500 of them with perfect stroke order, which I'm pretty happy with. I mean, even a couple of people have made comments.
Is that really hard though? Like
this
people
year.
make a big deal about stroke order, but once I think outside of a few exceptions, it's pretty basic. Like it's so easy, right? Like it's not. There is a logical. It's not random completely. Well,
no,
there are rules.
Yeah, that's true.
I never really thought of that as like a major thing. When people say like, "Oh fuck, the stroke order, it just makes it so hard."
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's It's not a big. It's not. I suppose it's not a big deal.
Sorry to knock you down there.
No, that's all right.
Okay, we're gonna cut the show here. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you next time on Guys Learning Japanese.